Just to start perhaps with some brief facts. I mean, it's very, very hard to come to any firm conclusions about numbers, origins, intentions, and things like that. But the best guess is probably there's about 12 to 15,000 people from other countries apart from Syria and Iraq who've gone there to join the conflict. Well, 12 to 15,000 people, maybe it doesn't sound very many, but if you compare it with the numbers who went to Afghanistan, for example, in the whole 10 years between 1979 and 89, but then on beyond that, while Al-Qaeda established itself there and sort of worked up to 2001 attacks and then the American invasion, which drove most of the foreigners out again. In all that period, probably at the very, very most, there were 20,000. And in fact, people who've studied the problem a little bit more granularly since then reckon that perhaps the number was only about 5,000. So compared to that, in a short period, relatively short period of 3 years or so, we now have 12 to 15,000 people going to Syria and Iraq to fight. So that raises lots of different issues, which I'd like to try and explore with you this morning. I should also say that whereas in Afghanistan, most people came from Arab countries, maybe some from Western countries, but there wasn't a great diversity of countries. I've now counted 83 different countries of origin for people who've gone to Syria. And 83 out of a total United Nations membership of 193, that is a pretty significant chunk of countries. Now, obviously, some of those countries will only have contributed 1 or 2 fighters. One shouldn't exaggerate that. But the spread of the message over that geographical and cultural variety is quite extraordinary. And the ages, again, in Syria, Iraq, are very different from how they were in Afghanistan. In Syria, Iraq, you get people, many people, unfortunately, as young as 15 who are going. And it's extraordinarily young to be exposed to the violence and horrors that are going on there. And the average age is probably early to mid-20s. Some people who are older are going. There was a fine example of a good British subject who was 41 with 3 children who blew himself up in a suicide bombing in Syria. But generally speaking, most of them in their late teens, early 20s. And I think that also reflects the sort of youth bulge in Middle East, North African countries, so the demographic fits, if you like, the audience, the constituency. Well, I guess a key question to ask is why do they go? And I think that here, again, we have to understand they're both push and pull factors. And they will vary enormously from individual to individual. And in many ways, you could say that each individual has his own reason for going. But if we look at some sort of common themes, there's enormous disillusion among youth in Middle East, North Africa in particular, but elsewhere as well. And a lot of the people who go have this sense of disillusionment. Maybe they've gone slightly off the rails as well, maybe with relationship problems, family problems or whatever, or just this general sense that they don't really fit in, they don't really belong, they don't really have any real sense of purpose, they don't really have any sense of identity. They don't identify with the governments that run their countries, with the policies that determine their future. And so they are, in a way, wanting to leave their past behind and have this new beginning. Even there's a sort of sense of redemption in a way about going. And I want to talk a little bit about the religious drivers as well. But the religion really is a gloss over a much deeper desire for a sense of identity and purpose and belonging. And they want to participate in something too. It's not just a passive motivation. It's much more active than that. But while wanting to participate, they also want to be led. They want to be told what to do. They want some sort of definite sort of direction to take, which can lead at the same time to a very personal, internal sense of fulfillment, often a spiritual fulfillment. And with that, the desire for respect, the desire for recognition, all these things enormously important in countries where there's a vast amount of youth who are all similar. Some may be more employed than others, some may be better off than others and so on. But fundamentally, they don't feel that the future is particularly interesting, even if it's relatively economically okay. Most of these guys are not very knowledgeable about their religion. Obviously, if they've been brought up in Saudi Arabia or even in some of the North African countries, they will have had a lot of religious instruction, but they're not deeply thinking about their religion. I mean, unfortunately, the way that Saudi Arabia education system is set up, there's an awful, and this is true also in many Muslim-majority countries, of course, there's a certain amount of rote learning rather than critical encouragement at critical thinking, examination of the issues, and discussion in class. But even, of course, were that to be the case, there would still be many people who reckoned that they would go and join this fight in Syria for religious purposes, because the religion tell you that you should do what you can to support your fellows, support the Ummah, the Muslim community, and that this is a good way of doing it because the Muslim community is being persecuted and treated badly, as indeed is the case by the Assad regime.